Thank you. Please be seated. So this afternoon, we are all gathered here to witness and to participate in the launch of the University of Guyana's gender policy. This policy has been supported by several departments within the university and also by several key external partnerships. I would therefore like to give recognition to Professor Paloma Mohamed, Vice-chancellor of the university, Ambassador Rene van Ness from the European Union, Ms. Yeşim Oruça, UN Resident Coordinator in Guyana, and Mr. Javier Cordoba, who will be joining us online, well, actually sending a recording, from UNICEF, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Mellissa Ifill, Mrs. Debbie Hopkinson, Interim Director for the Institute of Human Resiliency, Strategic Security and the Future, Ms. Tamara Bascom, the PRO for one of our student groups here on campus. I'd also like to give recognition to our special invitees from across both private and public institutions who are here with us, both physically and joining us virtually as well, our extended staff, students, and friends of the university. The launch of this policy is a very critical one, foremost given the date, the 25th. The 25th, as we should know, is a date recognized by the UN where we should strengthen our fight against violence. But this policy serves much more than that. First of all, it gives us a foundation when we talk about gender. Gender remains one of those concepts, ideas, notion that is still largely misunderstood. And I see this in my classroom, students coming in thinking that gender talks about the biology or that it has a focus on women only, to hearing them disrupting some of those ideals at the end of the discourse, looking at gender more critically by able to connect systems and how they affect different bodies of people, to recognize each of us have different access to power, resources, and privileges in our society. This policy also serves as a grounding framework in the university's commitment in reevaluating its policies, programs, and practices within this institution for both staff and students. Gender is one notion that we cannot escape if we are committed to promoting the well-being of people, both not only on the principles of social justice, equality, equity, and fairness, but also when we look at our present system, whether it be our political system, economic, leadership, governance. Gender is an idea, is a concept that we cannot escape. As such, I would first like to invite Professor Paloma Mohamed to give her open remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Please give the MC, the newly minted Dr. Lisa Edwards, a round of applause, please, for me. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Lisa is one of those wonderful success stories that we can celebrate in the University of Guyana. And I am sitting there this afternoon listening to her and feeling my heart swell, because when Lisa came to us about 10, 12 years ago as a very, very shy young girl brought in by her grandmother, who said, I want her to be somebody. She, up to about a year ago, would not speak in public and was very shy about it. And so I'm very delighted to not only see that she's doing so without notes, but very strongly. And so, Lisa, congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I stand upon the protocol that have already been set and take responsibility for my staff not beginning the proceedings without me on time, which is what I always ask them to do. I can always pop in when I am finished walking the gauntlet, because people stop me on the way here. So I can never really get anywhere on time unless I hide. But I apologize for the slightly late start. I do also wish to recognize a few things, noting that I have 5 minutes on this program. I'd like to recognize the fact that this event is happening several months after we actually had this policy created and passed in the university. The university's procedures are quite rigorous. We have to go through 4 different committees anytime we have a new policy enacted at the university. And one of the very significant things about having this policy is that we also have 3 other policies that are really important in regard to this. So one of them is, of course, this gender policy. The other one is the sexual harassment policy, which is much older. And the other one is the mental wellness and inclusion policy. And the significant aspect of this is that we feel that the policies can sometimes become quite dinosaurs sitting on a desk somewhere. And so what the university has done 2.5, almost 3 years ago, is created an inclusion unit. So the inclusion unit is staffed both by full-time staff. We have 4 full-time staff members in there. And also we have lecturers and others who volunteer in the center. We also have a disabilities policy, which is also very significant and important, and that dovetails with this. And in this regard, I'd like to thank EU once again, because this new ambassador may not know this, but EU has been working very, very closely with us on disabilities as well. We do have equipment in the Inclusion Center that was given by the EU, by a former, we even have some flowers that have been planted in our Peace Garden by former EU ambassador. I'd like to also recognize and thank the Women and Gender Equality Commission, who are very present here this afternoon, and they have been a tremendous support to the university in both developing these policies, but also commenting on them, making sure that we have what they consider to be important aspects covered. And also, of course, the Women and Gender Equality Commission have also supported research in the Gender Institute for some time. We have another institute in the university which I'd like to touch on a little bit, because their work kind of dovetails with the Gender Institute's work, and that is the Institute for Human Resilience, Strategic Security and the Future. The future part is young people and children, and of course strategic security, we don't need to unpack that. But the question of resiliency becomes very significant when we think about everything to do with human beings. And the university became very concerned and interested in this, this aspect of human life just before COVID in 2017, when we were creating our blueprint. And we began to look at literature and realize that a lot of work on individual resiliency was done, not settled, but resilient systems and structures was a big gap. And we started working with 10 universities on creating a discipline of human resiliency systems. And so that work is happening inside the Institute. And of course, part of this is really trying to understand how it is that we deal with violence, how we deal with human rights, be it around gender, around disabilities, around indigenous and minorities, all of those kinds of things. And so this event this afternoon, though simple and small, is long in coming, but it puts what I would like to call the final flower in the bouquet of rights-based policies and actions, as well as systems, offices, and people who have to enforce these policies. So, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to thank UNICEF, again, another wonderful partner, longtime partner. Of course, the Spotlight Initiative in EU, once again. I would like to recognize also the work of Yeşim and UNDP in other things that we are doing. And of course, the DVC for institutional advancement, Dr. Mellissa Ifill, who is herself a specialist and great advocate for gender, and worked very hard, I think, on driving this, as well as Debbie Hopkinson. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much. I think this policy is online. so that you could go to UG's website, and we invite everybody who wants to adapt it, borrow it, please cite, do your citing. But you can borrow it and borrow any one of the policies that we have if you want to do something internally. The last thing I want to say is that this policy is linked to a very interesting process that we do inside the university. Every student and staff member at this university has to take something we call our Human Relations course. And that is a 14-module course that is self-administered. It has a set of questions to begin with. You take the module and then you answer some other questions, the same questions in the end, so we can see if you actually learned anything or if anything changed. And every one of our students has to take this before they graduate. We have a data set now of over 30,000 responses from staff, students, and in 2022, we partnered with UNDP to open this up to the public. And this was really amazing because the public crashed our system. The first day, we couldn't take off, so we had to split the cohort into 3. This is something we're also offering. It has a gender component to it. It also has a national history and geography component. But we're also offering that because if you have an organization, you're listening out there, you want to introduce gender in a very cheap way to your staff, please feel free to contact UG and we could open up for you to do a module, a round for your staff and so on. So basically, very important. And last thing, we do have some gender and migration courses running for free, again, supported by UNDP and the EU. That's running right now. We have another cohort coming through in the next, I think it's the next semester. And so please, ladies and gentlemen, you're interested, you don't have to have a prerequisite anymore. Come, UG is doing a lot of work in these areas. We're open to you. We're the nation's university, and we really want to make sure that every citizen in this country and elsewhere, if they want to reach out online, we can support and learn from you and work with you with all of this work we have to do. Thank you so much. I think I'm not 5 minutes, but thank you very much.
Thank you, VC, and your attempt for dating me a bit, but please don't guess my age. Yes, a bit more settled in my nerves. Right. So those remarks, the different policies that VCs would have mentioned, and one of the things persons would say when interact with me is that Lisa is always gender, gender, gender. You know, gender is everywhere. But we shouldn't undermine the importance that gender plays when it comes to work in any field, be it health, political, governance, etc., not just only in the social realm. And with that, I would now like to invite our next speaker, but I just want to share a bit about his background. Ambassador Rene Van Ness is an European Union career diplomat with over 20 years experience in the European Union institution. Born in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, Rene started his international career, starting in Suriname, and he's very happy to be back in the region and working in Guyana. Thank you, and I'll now welcome you to give your remarks.
Thank you, Chairperson, Vice-chancellor Paloma, Mohamed, colleagues from the diplomatic... Thank you. Colleagues from the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be with you today on the day that the University of Guyana is launching its gender policy. And as we heard, this gender policy will make sure that the University of Guyana promotes gender equality, equity, non-discrimination and justice, and indeed equal opportunities for everyone within their academic career, for all staff and for all students. Ensuring equal rights for all individuals, regardless of their gender, is a really important catalyst for progress for growth in our societies, makes our countries richer, more prosperous, safer, more democratic. That's not just a matter of principle or moral duty. The participation of women and girls is absolutely essential if you want to have a democratic society, if you want to have justice, if you want to have peace and security and prosperity. Without that, that is simply impossible. So you cannot protect your forest, for example, without the very strong role and influence of the indigenous women, as we see when we implement our forest programs. So how are we doing worldwide on promoting gender equality? Well, I think we have to start by recognizing that there is not one single country that is completely on track in achieving this, not even our member states in Denmark or in Sweden. But we are making progress. I think we're making progress worldwide, and in the EU we've made huge efforts to do this. We have a European-wide gender action plan. If you're interested, you can visit that online. That goes with a lot of resources, and we make a huge investment. But we are not there yet. So let me share you a few, what I think are disturbing statistics from the European Union. So 50% of the women in the EU have experienced some form of sexual harassment at any moment in their life. Half of the women. 2 out of 10 have experienced physical and/or sexual violence by a partner or a friend. And at least 2 women are killed every single day in the European Union by an intimate partner or a family member. I think these are incredible statistics from one of the most wealthy parts of the world. So that is a devastating impact of gender-based violence on individual women, on their families, and it's obvious that that is reason enough to end violence against women. No woman or girl should ever be afraid for violence or should feel limited in exploiting their capacities and opportunities for the simple reason that they are a woman or a girl. Let me talk a bit about the societal cost. They try to calculate that for the European Union. So in the EU, they calculate that 290 billion euro, and I looked it up for you because it doesn't mean a thing, that is 30 times the GDP of Guyana, right? 30 times the GDP of Guyana is spent on the cost of gender-based violence. And those costs are health services, social welfare, and indeed criminal justice for when these things are brought to justice. That is a phenomenal cost, right? But that's not even the biggest cost. The biggest cost is not making use of the potential of women. And so the European Union and also Guyana cannot afford to overlook that potential of women. If you want to become the breadbasket of the Caribbean, you have to involve women. If you want to become the regional health hub, you can't do that without involving your women. So enabling women to play their role, to recognize women leadership throughout all these dimensions is absolutely critical if you want to achieve Guyana's very ambitious goals and growth objectives. One Guyana is about men and women alike working hand in hand to build that future for all. In coming to an end, I would like to appreciate the work that we did with the United Nations and I must say with the government of Guyana in working on the Spotlight Initiative. That is now coming to an end. So that was an initiative funded completely by the European Union. I think it ended last December, isn't it, Yeşim? I wish it had continued, but it has come to an end. Yes, it will continue. You will continue it, exactly. So Spotlight was in many ways a very successful program, and it is successful because of the dedication of the people that implemented it. So I think it made a real dent in addressing gender inequality, in family violence, in gender-based violence, and so I think there is a lot that can now be taken forward in order to make sure that that fight is successful. And indeed, the investment in the University of Guyana Institute of Gender Studies was partially funded from this Spotlight initiative. And I want to congratulate the staff of the University of Guyana and the students who worked so hard in shaping that gender policy. It's a commitment of breaking down barriers and to build bridges, and it's a promise to create a university where everyone, regardless of your gender identity, feels empowered, feels respected, and feels ready to conquer the world and the opportunities that Guyana has to offer. So I hope that that is the beginning of a transformative journey within the university, but I hope that that radiates and gives its positive influence to the wider Guyanese society. So let me end by expressing that the principles outlined in the UG gender policy will resonate to the furthest corners of this beautiful country, fostering a society where every individual, regardless of your gender, can thrive and continue to build a brighter and more prosperous future for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Van Ness, for your remarks. I certainly would like to echo them, that as simple as this launch may be perceived to be, this policy is a very critical one when we think of the university and where it is presently, but also its development in the next few years. And to connect that to the larger context, Guyana, and where we are presently, and our development in the next few years. We cannot divorce it from gender. Gender must be center, please. I will now like to briefly introduce our next speaker. Ms. Yeşim Oruça is the UN Resident Coordinator in Guyana. She also has more than 20 years of experience in international relations and sustainable development. Prior to her appointment to Guyana, Ms. Oruça served as UNDP's Deputy Director in Washington. She has also worked for UNDP in Albania, Romania, and in her home country, Turkey. I'd now like to welcome Ms. Oruça.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. Absolutely great to be here. I really, although Spotlight Initiative ended, it continues through these products and partnerships, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. But allow me, Ambassador Van Ness did such an amazing job of charting where we are globally with gender equality. Indeed, Sustainable Development Goal number 5, on which all countries are off track. There is no exception. So I'm going to leave that a bit to the side on the gender equality bit, and maybe, if you humor me, focus on the role of institutions. I want to thank you, University of Guyana, for the development of this policy, for prioritizing gender equality in your work. This is not the first time we're working together under Spotlight. Both at the institutional level now with this gender equality policy, but also in your academic programs, which Dr. Edwards also alluded to, we have collaborated in introducing new courses and now bolstering this up with institutional policy of gender equality. But what I'm really impressed about is not that we've worked together in coming up with this gender policy, but that it complements other policies that the University of Guyana has already woven into its institutional, practical, cultural makeup, including, above all, to me very important, is the sexual harassment and sexual misconduct policy. Together, these really bolster one another, complement one another, so that we really lead by example, implement by example, but also showing that it's institutions that make change. My individual actions, your individual actions are not how these social problems are addressed. They are really addressed through institutional changes and holding people to account on them. So I'm very impressed to read in your strategy and in the complementary policies of the institutional setup that has been designated, roles and responsibilities, all the way from you, Madam Vice-Chancellor, to the units that you mentioned, including the Human Resources Unit at your university, looking at the entire university, not just the Gender Studies Unit, other units and how they all come together to implement the strategy, the policy, gender inclusion policy. We all know a policy is a piece of paper. It is its implementation and it's being the rendering of account on a policy that really make it come alive. And for that, I thank the University of Guyana for leading on this and by demonstrating an institutional response to this issue, which as the United Nations, of course, being an institution, maybe we're a little geeky. Yes, we're bureaucrats. Yeah, it's not the most attractive thing to be a bureaucrat. You guys are a bit more stellar being academics and teaching. But I value the role and the function of institutions. I'm also very proud that outside the walls of the University of Guyana, this policy joins other policies and cooperations. One with the University of Guyana, the UN has proudly partnered with multiple parts of the University of Guyana, from the triple planetary crisis to vocabularies of peace, just since I've been here in the past 3 years, where we've worked very closely together. But it also takes its place besides other concrete collaborations of the Spotlight Initiative funded by the EU in Guyana, including the harassment bill, which I understand is now being, Nicole was just briefing me that it's being readied for being tabled in Parliament, the women empowerment principles with private sector institutions that is being pushed again with the private sector, that one through UN Women in partnership with the private sector, and many others. So I'm really happy to see these institutional frameworks taking hold across institutions in Guyana. Applaud the University of Guyana for really living by this mandate and demonstrating how the rest of us can, in institutions across Guyana, may and should consider, especially sexual harassment policies in their own structures. And I avail the cooperation of the United Nations to all institutions who wish to embrace gender equality policies and sexual harassment policies across their institutions, and invite you to visit our website, where we actually have these policies up and very visible in our multiple websites. Thank you very much for the honor to be here and for the collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Uruk, for those remarks. You have certainly hinted on some key principles when we talk about doing the work of gender, which includes community. So we need to build stronger community engagement, not only with institutions, grassroots organizations, but everyone, within and outside of organization. You've also hinted on a concept we talk about a lot in gender studies, that is intersectionality. So even though I'm here on a gender, of course, it intersects, whether it's the Institute of Human Resiliency, the Institute on Energy, all of the institutes throughout the university. So thank you for those remarks. So our next speaker has submitted to us a recording, but I just want to briefly give a background. Mr. Javier Cordoba is a national of Spain who has more than 19 years of professional experience related to the rights of children and adolescents. He works in UNICEF Suriname as program manager, head of office, and is currently serving as deputy representative for Guyana, officer in charge too. Before his current stint at UNICEF, he combined different professional experiences in NGOs and other UN agencies in Latin American countries. I'll now ask our lead technical person to play the video submitted.
Of the United Nations, Rene, European Union Ambassador, Vice-chancellor and Deputy Vice-chancellor, faculty, students, staff, members of the media. UNICEF is very pleased and excited to be part of the launch of the gender policy for the University of Guyana. We recognize that this policy is part and parcel of a longer-term investment and collaboration as part of the European Union United Nations Spotlight Initiative investment in Guyana. More so, today's launch signals the university's commitment to ensuring a commitment to both equity and equality, as per the laws of Guyana and Guyana's international commitment, such as those outlined in the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This policy comes at a critical time. UNICEF is very, very pleased that it has supported the government of Guyana with other policy initiatives such as the drafting of laws and policies related to the prevention and response to family violence and harassment. And specifically for the University of Guyana, the policy complements historic investments. These include the course related to gender-based violence under the European Union United Nations Spotlight Initiative and the support for other courses, such as those in psychology and trauma, which have supported the delivery of much-needed services as part of the violence response in the country. Today's policy will complement those investments and will also support the work for the establishment of the Gender Institute in this 2024. To finalize my intervention, I would like to commend Professor Mohamed, the faculty, the students, and all the staff, because in UNICEF we are convinced that the gains realized through this policy will serve the university for a lifetime. And as per policy, we deeply encourage the university to promote a zero-tolerance policy for any form of gender-based violence that emanates from gender inequality. Thank you so much and congratulations again.
Because in UNICEF, we are convinced that the gains realized through this policy will serve the university.
So for our next speaker, I would like to invite Dr. Mellissa Ifill, Deputy Vice-chancellor for Institutional Advancement here at the university, to give her some brief insights into the policy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I stand on protocols that have already been established. Today, my task is to briefly give you an insight into the gender policy of the University of Guyana. And I think a quote that I pulled from the policy at the bottom, I think it encapsulates precisely what we believe at the university and what we hope to inculcate in all our systems and processes. That gender equality is a human right, and that it exists when all persons, irrespective of assigned gender or gender identity, enjoy equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. So our gender policy is premised on the University of Guyana's mission, which is to discover, generate, disseminate, and promote, apply knowledge of the highest standard for the service of the local, national, and international community within an atmosphere of academic freedom that allows for the teaching and development of critical thinking and inquiry skills. And we believe that in order for us to achieve this particular mission, we need to inculcate a particular culture at the University of Guyana where our students can function, where our staff can function and operate in an environment that is free from any kind of violence, whether physical, emotional, structural, psychological. And so this is really the linchpin. Our mission is the linchpin of this particular policy. So it includes a gender equality mission statement that speaks to everyone that engages the University of Guyana, everyone that is involved in and with the University of Guyana, both internally and externally. So our students, our staff, our vendors, our partners, irrespective of gender, we believe that we all have equal rights. We must all have equal opportunities, particularly when it comes to development opportunities at the University of Guyana. So this is the, gender equality mission statement. So the purpose of the policy, again, to create an environment for our students, an environment for our staff, an environment for our faculty, so that everyone receives the same treatment that is fundamentally equal, fair, and violence-free. So these are the objectives of the policy. I won't read through them. But essentially, again, it speaks to dignity, they speak to respect, they speak to respecting persons' gender as well as their gender identity and their gender expression. They speak to policies outlining how the university will respond if there are instances brought to it of any form of gender discrimination. They speak to the university wishing to inculcate gender equality at all levels and in all of our operations. Now, the policy also outlines to whom it is applied. And it's applied to everyone, all staff, whether you're full-time or part-time, whether you're temporary or you're permanent, and all prospective staff. It applies to all students, whether the student is a current student or they're applying to the university. All our campuses, Turkine, Berbice, IDC campuses, our vendors, our visitors, our partners. It applies to the staff application process. It applies to leadership and the management of the university. It applies to our processes of selection and recruitment and promotion. It applies to our terms and conditions. So all of these elements have been infused and are continually being infused with the concept of gender equity. It applies when it speaks to, it applies to the concept of professional development, that we want to ensure that there is equality. It applies to our grievance procedures for both staff and also for students. So these are our gender equality declarations. I think I've spoken to most of them before because they are repeated in our objectives as well as our purpose. But one I want to highlight in particular is our spoken and written language, because oftentimes we can perpetuate inequality in our language, whether written language or spoken language. And the university has taken very deliberate steps to teach us all, and we will continue to take those steps, to teach us all what language is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And this is something, as I said, that we will continually do because, we continue to have students, new students coming in, new staff members coming in. But those are the gender equality declarations that are contained in the policy. We also have highlighted what are our expectations for our faculty, our staff, and our students. And we take these very seriously. These are communicated to our staff and our students at orientation, and they're advised what we expect of them as they navigate, as students navigate their journey with us, and as staff become members of the UG family. So it speaks to no faculty or student harassing, discriminating, or committing any form of violence against another faculty, staff, or student on the basis of gender or gender identity, that we must treat everyone with respect, that no one will be allowed to foster an environment that is intimidating in any way, that is hostile, that is degrading, or that is offensive on the basis of gender, and that we encourage and we expect our staff, if they encounter such circumstances, that they will bring it to the attention of the authorities so that it can be addressed. And that when we are referring to each other and when we are engaging each other, we do so in a very respectful manner. The Vice-chancellor had mentioned that the university has a number of complementary policies, and these are just some that I have highlighted here. Our sexual harassment and sexual misconduct policy, our inclusivity, diversity, and equity policy, and our policies relating to recruitment, promotion, and professional development. And so we urge that these policies are read in tandem because they complement each other. Who's responsible for the policy? Overall responsibility, the Vice-chancellor, who has overall responsibility for the university, but she has delegated the day-to-day responsibility for the implementation of the policy to 3 units: the HR unit, the inclusion unit, and the IGS. And each has a very important role to play in ensuring that this policy is adhered to, that this policy, the implementation of it, is monitored and evaluated, and when necessary, reviewed. But it's also important for us to realize that we are all responsible. So our deans, our department heads, our administrative officers, our supervisors, as well as every single student, every single faculty member, every single staff, we are all responsible for the implementation of this particular policy. In terms of implementing the policy, we have outlined a number of strategies to ensure that it is effectively implemented. Because ultimately, as we all know, we can have policies that can sit on a shelf, or we can have policies that can have real teeth and meaning, and that's what we wish to do. To do so, we recognize the importance of data collection and ensuring that we have information upon which we can actually make or take decisions. And so the HR division plays a key role in this particular regard. We also wish to ensure that we mainstream gender in the curriculum, and the IGS, the Institute for Gender Studies, is tasked with and has been working with faculties, schools, and colleges in the university to look at their programs to ensure that all of the gendered value judgments, that these are managed in an appropriate manner. But we also wish to promote gender-sensitive planning and research. And so the data that is being created, we hope and we expect that when the university is engaging and developing our research objectives, that these will be included. At the level of the faculty and departments, they also have their role to play to encourage and create structured and non-threatening climate with which to explore gender issues. And again, the IGS will support through short courses, workshops, and by establishing gender committees, etc. The senior administrative team we also commit to understanding the structure and processes that impact our students staying with us, and developing gender-sensitive indicators to guide resource allocation as it relates to teaching and learning. Gender-based violence and sexual harassment. As I noted before, we have a sexual harassment and sexual misconduct policy, and we pledge to hold perpetrators of gender-based harassment and violence accountable. In this policy, and in all our policies, we have both prevention and disciplinary measures outlined. So we are not waiting until someone offends. We are going to assist everyone to conduct themselves in a manner that they should, but in the event they err, there are disciplinary procedures that have been outlined. Very importantly, resource mobilization for gender equity and gender equality. And our commitment to utilizing and deploying sufficient resources, whether human resources, material resources, financial resources, through our budgetary processes, so that we could move towards gender-sensitive and inclusive, fully inclusive services and facilities. The Inclusion Unit has a very important role to play through a policy implementation committee, which will oversee and monitor the implementation of the policy. This committee has a number of resources internal to the university and external to the university that it can borrow from and lean upon. And we also have monitoring and evaluation. This is another key function of the Inclusion Unit in collaboration with the IGS. In order for persons to be aware of the policy, to know what the policy entails, to understand the repercussions for violating the same, we will provide adequate information and training. So in the policy, there are persons who have been designated as individuals to receive such complaints, and these officers will be trained. We will train them as well as facilitators and mediators. We will train them with educational materials developed by the IGS in collaboration with our partners. We will make online, the Vice-chancellor has already indicated that we have done so and we will continue to do so, a module on gender equality, gender equity, and gender justice as part of our human relations course. And we will also provide online, free, for anyone who might wish to take advantage of the same, information on resources that are available both at the university and nationally to support victims. There are all elements of the policy. It's too long for me to go through it entirely. So it has outlined our discrimination complaints procedure. It has outlined what happens if the policy is breached. It has considerations of gender in language with examples of what is gender-sensitive language and what is not gender-sensitive language, and what kinds of language violate our policy. And it also has online resources that are included. So that brings me to the end of my brief presentation on our gender policy. I would like, in closing, to thank our partners, thank the UN and its associated agencies, including the UNDP, UNICEF, EU, and all of those gender specialists, many of whom saw a draft, reviewed it, gave us some excellent feedback that allow the university to enhance and improve on this particular product. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ifill, for those remarks. I must admit, when I read this final document several times, I was like, oh gosh, more work. But I welcome it. I welcome it. I just want to expand some of the elements that Dr. Ifill, presented to us a few moments ago and to place it in a larger context. This policy offers us a definition of gender that staff, students, external partners can continually engage with. Because as I mentioned earlier, gender is still misunderstood. And in that policy, it provides that very clear definition when we talk about gender and helping us to bridge and build upon that definition. Secondly, in doing gender work, one of the issues many organizations, not only in Guyana, regionally and even globally, the challenge that they have is mainstreaming gender. What does that look like? Because not all of us have the understanding. What do we mean by mainstreaming gender? What does it include? And that is one of the downfall when you have agencies seeking to implement gender and they're like, okay, what is happening? There are no changes. How can we improve this? And that policy outlined very clearly some of the strategies the university will be adopting when we're talking about mainstreaming gender in this institution. Thirdly, this policy formed is a very foundational work, a framework rather, when we look at Guyana and other institutions, be it our public-private institutions, our NGOs as well, and they mainstreaming gender within their organizations. So with that, I now want to move on to the next item within our program. We do have a drama piece that we have put together for you that will highlight very briefly an element of the policy, and I'd like to welcome the artists to the stage.
fine, you can't get everything you like in life. Life is more better.
But we can start somewhere. And I think UG is the best place for us to start. You know, we could start studying new. Start doing all those things for the environmental study. I don't know what anybody.
You done? In the meantime, we just don't make you. We have all the fancy things you want, but harassment, the policy, all the things out there right now.
Andrew, in all fairness, you might have a point to know. Remember sociology class was at diversity and inclusion? And the fancy word for
So, come on, all of this just theory, them things don't happen in real life, but it is not practical. Understand? We just relax with it.
See, this will make no point. I don't even know why I thought this out. But I just do. But you know what? Thanks for following me.
Don't
But you
listen.
see, you want to. I just hope that one day, just one day, you just walk in my shoes. Anything else, I just hope that one day.
Don't be sad, so. Let's go.
Andrew, yeah, you think you're upset or you're overreact?
No, it's just emotional, but you know what we're doing. But again, I want to be the goal spot. I want to pass the exam tomorrow. And I feel you should do the same thing. And you want to be the only one that actually, you know, don't you want to know me to this course, especially at this course.
Nah, I get that people.
Yeah, so I give a body.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Wow, look at you, sir. Good morning. The pants fit you so perfectly. Yummy.
Excuse me?
You going up, UG? You want to taxi, young man?
Yeah, I want to go UG.
A handsome man like you, I would drop you for free.
Oh, I can go for free, you sure?
And take you home too?
No, no, but it's all right. I feel like a walk to you. Just have to make a Yo, I'm just ready now, bye. I think you need to take some time to make it already. Yeah.
But Andrew, I don't think I can do that exam anymore. I think I could do this program.
Why?
You don't understand. Right now, I'm so stressed. Everybody knows me that this career path I choose is my dream. Everybody tell me that this is not a man's job. I should be in this profession, and there's no scope for me. And that you always choose a woman over me. You know, I'm tired, I'm stressed. I give you nobody. Nobody's listening to me. You know what? I can find something that aligns.
But don't make the no sense. You're talking nonsense, why? You're really good at this thing and you love it for it.
Andrew, you and I are the only men in this program. And the people are right.
It's what the two of them doing there alone.
Watch y'all. Oh, God.
Do you talking about?
Hello. You. Biggie and Brownie.
Why don't Biggie and Brownie are
Biggie.
Biggie and Brownie.
Just let it go, man.
Good morning. How can you come? Young gentlemen, ready for the exams today?
Maybe, madam.
I mean, that's a word to give.
Actually, right now I'm thinking about it.
Everything you should do while you're quit. The party should quit too.
Me?
I'm just joking, Monet. Cool down. I'm just joking. But you know, I think you can handle the talking story.
Psst, psst. Hello, young man. Good morning. Why your face is screw up, man?
Watch how he big. I would glad for turn you into me pillow.
Ashley, you listen to yourself. Like you feel less respectful, you feel less fair to have Ashley doing. If I tell you why you doggy.
That is life.
Brown boy, smile for me now. You can't smile? You got nice teeth in your mouth.
Hey, you see, it's because Vice-chancellor tell me anything one more time I report you, you know. Report to who, Andrew?
Ashley, that is not a compliment. You are harassing me.
Beautiful brown boy. Hello, Brownie. Brownie. Biggie.
Y'all think y'all could make it in this campus, in this course, in this profession? Brownie, Biggie, look at you.
Shut up, shut up, shut up! Shall say it again, why? It's all because of this stupid dream. This stupid dream, though. And I got exams.
Yeah, exam day was easy peasy. Oh, yeah, I think y'all did, man.
I think I do great. And what do you think you do?
Yeah, I do.
I suppose I do well.
What are you supposed to do well? That's almost easy for it.
Yeah, but when you have to study, I had a hard night. I had a dream. And everything is slipped wrong. And for me, you was the only woman in the class and one said no one. Everywhere I go, the women just like, kept calling me brownie. Don't laugh, bye. Nice teeth and good, nice pants. And then a female taxi driver, she go go. You quit the program.
Me? Quit?
Yes, you quit the program because you feel everybody says it's a woman's job and you should be doing it. And plus people will discriminating against. have to say yesterday, and listen to me, dream way, come up, just listen to what I'm telling you. And I feel that the policy should ensure the understand that faculty, staff, and students, and everybody speak in respectful language to one another when it concerns gender.
So, how we gonna go about doing that?
You know what I think? That's a good question. You know, I think that everybody cases should be thoroughly investigated and be treated within a timely manner.
Good. That's what I think.
Sounds good. And then also, you can get them to do like a written report,
Yeah. I like how the ideas, so here we're going to do. You compile all the ideas and the suggestions, you understand, and then we will go and present the case. We will present the case. Yeah, all the way to the Vice-chancellor. All the way to the Vice-chancellor, we will set up a meeting and tell you the ideas.
You know, actually, I think you get one idea, no. But the truth you want to share, should not tell me no.
Because trying to explain to you a lot of them, but I agree.
Alright, so we're going to go. I just want to say that one of us, okay? It's not like sorry about the yesterday. Really talking about when you see or see for us, people very expensive and unreasonable. First of all, jokes and people and Japanese and those jokes and so on. It's very sorry. Avinash, knowing a new class and saying that she studies so that she knows wrong and right, very sexist. I'm sorry you gave me enough sort of advice and I want to get up. You know, accept my
Man, it's awful. Listen, if I think we should come together and work as one community.
We need to support each other.
And listen to the simple, gender equality is important.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, darling, go to the Vice-chancellor now before this idea die away and she give me 3 no.
And when we go to start the castle, I said that next week.
Yes, definitely we know break.
Yes, if we can give our artists one more round of applause. Many, many thanks. I will admit they were able to turn this around in a very, very short time frame, and I surely do appreciate their commitment in getting this done. Next on our agenda, as we wind down, I would like to welcome Mrs. Debbie Hopkinson, but first let me give a brief introduction. Mrs. Hopkinson is the current Interim Director for the Institute of Human Resiliency, Strategic Security and the Future. She's also a National Professional Leadership and Social Work Consultant, educator, mentor, guidance counselor, positive parenting skills trainer, human services planning and leadership trainer. I welcome Mrs. Hopkinson to give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, and good afternoon. Respectfully observing all protocols that were established. Ashley, you need to watch Andrew. It's possible that he used that line to ensure that he can get you to study with him. So make sure you investigate. So today my humble task is to provide closing remarks. And I wish to begin by saying that the gender-based violence policy is indeed relevant. This is because it provides the guidelines that are necessary to ensure that our staff, our students, engage with gender and gender-related issues in a just and fair manner. It also means that our administrators have a responsibility to ensure that they do not engage with their biases when deciding on recruitment and promotional matters. The policy indeed is linked to and complements the inclusivity policy, as well as the sexual harassment policy that I heard would be very soon launched at the national level. And so in that regard, the university, I wish to say, is indeed setting the pace as the premier national institution in Guyana when it comes to formulation and implementation of policies. I also wish to say that the development of the IGS 1201, Resilience and Disruption Against Gender-Based Violence course, is one that is being offered through the University of Guyana. It is offered free. It has already begun, and so I heard that the Vice-chancellor spoke about it. I want to say to you, if you're thinking about conducting that course now, perhaps you should wait a little bit, because you would have missed quite a bit of information that may be to your disadvantage. However, it will be offered again in the new semester, and please be sure to apply so you can conduct that course and gain the knowledge necessary for you. I also want to say that the gender-based violence policy here at the University of Guyana is indeed progressive, because it is an integral contribution towards the achievement of the MDG goals, number 3, and the SDG goals, number 5. And this is important. Why is this important? Because if we were to promote gender and gender equality, particularly as it relates to women and girls, then it's important that we employ policies so that we are able to conduct ourselves in a manner that is respectful towards women, respectful towards girls, and respectful towards anyone despite their gender identity. And in this regard, you know, usually when I teach these courses that are related to gender and so on and violence, I would say to my students, because this is always an argument in the classroom, right? Particularly given sometimes persons' religious persuasions, etc. And so one of the things I would always say to students is this: every person is first of all a human. When somebody comes before you with a matter, your first responsibility is to deal with that person on the basis that that person is a human being. And I say that in the context that the declarations and the expectations of how we are to behave, of course, will bring about some arguments dependent on people's persuasions. Our responsibility at the University of Guyana is to ensure that we treat everyone who comes to this university as a human being. And in that regard, the human rights dictates that we treat them respectfully. I was given 5 minutes, but I'm sure I'm not going to be here for 5 minutes. And I'm told I'm finished 5 minutes. So I wish to conclude by saying, I am very happy and pleased, and I'm sure our Vice-chancellor is too, and our international partners as well as our local partners, that we have decided as a national university to definitely draft, develop, and certainly we will implement this policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hopkinson, for those remarks and reiterating that gender equality is a human right. And now for our final item. All right, so a little switch up on the program. We do have some gifts we'd like to give our external partners. So I'd like to welcome the parties to present same.
So, ladies and gentlemen, some modest thank yous to our colleagues who have come. So, Ambassador Van Ness, please step forward. Thank you so much on behalf of the university. Yasmin Aruk. Lisa. And where is my colleague? She's left from the gender equality. Anybody from gender equality is here to receive this? You want to come, Ms. Cole? That's a great support of ours. Thank you all very much.
Okay. All right. Now for the final item on our agenda, I'd like to welcome Ms. Tamara Bascom. But before I do, to briefly give a short bio. So Tamara is a student of ours who currently serves on the board as a community service and co-finance director for the Rotaract Club of the University of Guyana. She's also the public relations officer for the UG Female Empowerment Movement, UG Fem, and one of her main goals in life is to empower women and children and to develop her community. Tamara?
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. All protocols being observed. Thank you. Okay. It is my pleasure to be able to give this vote of thanks on behalf of UG Fem, Female Empowerment Movement, a representing student group at the University of Guyana. The launch of the University of Guyana's gender policy has been marked a significant moment within the institution. I therefore would like to express gratitude to Vice-chancellor Professor Paloma Mohamed and Deputy Vice-chancellor Dr. Mellissa Ifill, not only for their remarks shared here today, but also for facilitating and executing the creation of such a policy. Thank you must also be expressed to the university's external partners, Ambassador Rene from the European Union, Ms. Yeşim United Nations Resident Coordinator in Guyana, and Mr. Javier, Cordoba, Deputy Representative Officer in charge, UNICEF for Guyana and Suriname, for their continued partnership with the university and the creation of their gender policy. I would also like to thank Keon Haywood and team for providing an insightful dramatization on the gender policy. Mistress Debbie Hopkinson, Interim Director, Institute for Human Resilience, Strategic Security and the Future, for providing the closing remarks by recapping some of the important points made at today's launch. I would also like to thank all supporting staff and team for the execution of this launch, including but not limited to the Institute of Gender Studies, PACE, Institutional Advancement Maintenance, DECC, and Security for their collaboration. Finally, special thank you to you, audience members, staff, students, friends, and partners of the university for your presence at this launch, both in person and virtually. Many, many thanks once again.
Thank you, Tamara. So I'd now like to invite Professor, Vice-Chancellor, DVC, and our external partners for a photo op, and then we can break with light refreshments. What thing? Oh.